What is it good for?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Say it again, y'all.
Whoa.
Look out.
What is it good for?
Absolutely. Listen to me. Oh, whoa. I despise. Cause it means destruction of innocent lives. War means tears. The thousands of mothers die when their sons go off to fight and lose their lives. I said war. Good God, y'all.
What is it good for?
Absolutely. Get said again.
Whoa.
Oh, Lord.
What is it good for?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Listen to me.
Whoa.
It ain't nothing but a heartbreak.
Whoa.
Friend only to the undertaker. Oh, Lord. This is enemy to all mankind. The thought of war blows my mind. War has caused unrest within the younger generation. Induction, then destruction. Who wants to die? Oh, war. Good God, y'all.
What is it good for?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Said.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
What is it good for?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Listen to me.
Whoa.
It ain't nothing but a heartbreaker.
Whoa.
I got one friend, that's the undertaker. Oh, Lord, has shattered many a young man's dreams. Made him disabled, bitter and mean. Life is much too short and precious to spend fighting wars each day. War can't give life, it can only take it away. Oh, war. Good God, y'all.
What is it good for?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Say it again.
Whoa.
Oh, Lord.
What is it good for?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Listen to me.
Whoa.
It ain't nothing but a heartbreaker.
Whoa.
Friend only to the undertaker. Please love and understand and tell me, is there no place for the everyday? They say we must fight to keep our freedom, but Lord knows there's got to be a better way. Oh, whoa, God, y'all.
What is it good for?
You tell them. Say it.
Whoa.
Good God, now.
What is it good for?
Stand up and shout it. private dick. That's a sex machine to all the chicks. You're damn right. Good evening, Patriots, and welcome back. Welcome back to the Radical Republicans Live Show. I am your host, Chief Jerome Bell, the J Black Mamba. Let me tell you, Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year. We are kicking off 2026 with a bang. If you thought 2025 was wild, you guys need to buckle up because we're only 4 days into this year, and we've already got a story that's going to define American foreign policy for months to come. I'm talking about the capture of Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president. Some will call him a dictator, who's been a thorn, as some would say, in America's side for years. He was taken down by surprise operation by U.S. Special Forces this weekend. So now, before the corporate media spins this into whatever narrative fits the agenda, we're going to break it down exactly what happened and what it means, and whether this is the kind of strength America needs to project or just another costly intervention that will come back to haunt us. And folks, I didn't come to fight this alone tonight. Joining me tonight is a woman who knows U.S. operations inside and out. I'm going to have Colonel Towner-Watkins with me here tonight after I do my, got to do my sponsorship stuff. But this is what I love about starting a new year. This is our 7th year starting the Radical Republicans Live Show. It's changed over the years a little bit. I used to have 4 people. I used to have co-hosts. Back in the day, we used to play some jazz, used to talk about some stuff, just like we do now. But we don't ease into it. We don't do soft topics here. We jump straight into the deep end with the biggest story in the world right now. And we're going to give you an analysis that you won't get anywhere else, I don't believe. So think about it. U.S. forces just conducted a precision operation in Venezuela. They captured a sitting head of state, the president, or some would say the not president, because the elections, they say, were stolen. We're going to get into that too. But the same administration here that can't seem to make any arrest on the election fraud here, or Anthony Fauci, or the Epstein list, or anything like that, right? So they just executed a military operation in South America. And kudos to our boys. It's one thing, I'm always going to back our boys. I'm always going to back our military, no matter what they face, no matter what missions they have to go do, because they are taking orders. I've been there for 27 years. I believe Colonel Watkins was in the Air Force for around 27 years as well. We'll get that from her. But what's really going on here? Is this really about American security? Is it about the oil? Is it about just sending a message to China and Russia, who've been in Venezuela propping up Maduro for years? So Colonel Watkins and I are going to talk about that. We're going to walk through this operation step by step, and she's going to talk about some other stuff. We're going to just dig in. She's going to be here for the whole 2 hours. So we're just going to do what we do here. We're going to talk about that, what the intelligence community may have known, what the military executed, what the fallout is going to be, not just in Venezuela, but across entire Latin America and right here at home too, because there is going to be some fallout. Okay, there's going to be some fallout. So here's the thing. So 2026 is a critical year. We've got Senate races, we have House races, and the chess pieces are being set for 2028. So every decision being made right now, every military operation, every policy choice, is going to be all connected. And you deserve to understand how it's going to be connected. Okay, so tonight's show is going to be fire. We're always uncensored, unfiltered, unedited, unscripted, and of course, unapologetic. And that's our promise to you every single week. And we're delivering it right on and right out of the gate in 2026. Okay, so let me hit this, my sponsor real quick, Supermassive Black Coffee. Okay, are you tired of the same old corporate coffee, diluted and devoid of character? It's time to break free from the chains of mediocrity with supermassive black coffee. Crafted from 100% organic beans, this coffee is fire roasted in a Victorian era roaster, a relic from an age when true craftsmanship thrived. This unique process allows the flames to caress each bean, unlocking bold, rich flavors with dark chocolate undertones and a smooth, smoky finish. In a time of soaring coffee prices and supply chain disruptions, Supermassive Black Coffee stands as a beacon of quality and resilience. While others compromise, this brand remains steadfast, delivering a brew that defies convention and invites coffee lovers to explore the depths of flavor and mystique. To join the rebellion against the mundane, visit Coffee, supermassiveblackcoffee.com and use code MBN for 20% off your order, or you can use Mamba, MAMBA, for 20% off your order. Embrace the conspiracy and sip the mystery. So, Colonel Watkins, I'm going to bring you in from a military operational standpoint, what went down in Venezuela this weekend, but I'm definitely going to ask you to introduce yourself first. So, welcome to the show, Colonel Watkins. How are you, ma'am?
Great. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. So welcome. So I tell you what, introduce yourself, tell people who you are and what you do, and then we're gonna just come out of the bat on this Venezuela thing because I have some questions.
Well, I spent 30 years in the Air Force. I joined right after high school, kind of on a dare from my dad. And I was enlisted initially for 8 years and worked on airplanes. And that was my dream job. When I decided to apply for a ROTC scholarship, I really wanted to be a maintenance officer, but you know how personnel is in the military. They had other designs and decided to make me a desk officer. So I made the best of that and proceeded through the ranks, went to the whole reason I joined the military was so I could get a college education. And so 6 degrees later, I've done nothing but in my adult life, but go to school, it seems like. And I'm very thankful to the US military for providing that opportunity because I literally had no opportunity to go to school other than that because we were from the rural part of Central Florida. And neither one of my parents had graduated from high school. So it was kind of an anomaly for us, to even finish high school, let alone go to college.
Right.
And that was just my dream. I wanted to be the first kid in my family to achieve that milestone, which I was. And of course, like any military person, you spend your time all over the world learning a lot of different things, a lot of different cultures, being thankful that you get to come home to America after every one of your deployments or tours.
Right.
Um, I was in northern Iraq during Desert Storm One, and I was at US CENTCOM on 9/11. So I spent 4 years at the Pentagon. I have a very broad background from watching different military operations from the inside. And about 3 years ago, obviously going to school all the time, you have to read. And I'm an avid reader. I've read nonfiction books my whole adult life and have quite a collection of them. The About 3 years ago, I started reading a series of books by a man named Anthony Sutton, and he basically kind of rocked my world. He talked about how there's this, I call it the International Syndicate, some people call it the cabal or whatever, that they basically had orchestrated the Bolshevik Revolution and funded Hitler and funded FDR's rise to the presidency. And that kind of was, and it was put into a context that basically they create this division of this leftist mentality called communism and this right, what we preferably call the right, the Nazism, or far right and far left. And they do it in order to create chaos. And it's called the strategy of tension. So if you can get people polarized, then you can manipulate them because they're already in an emotional state. And we see that play out in America for, the last 150 years with race. The whole purpose of dividing people is so you can control them. And the more you can do to create division, whether it's about this sexual gender stuff or whatever, they want people in little pockets because in that emotional state, psychological operations tells you that then you can control them. And just a real quick funny story, since you're probably close to my age. My husband in all of this, who's been very supportive, comes up to me one day and he says, "Hey, do you remember that comedy we used to watch called Get Smart?" And I'm looking at him going, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you remember what those two entities were called?" And I'm like, "No." And he says, "Chaos and control." That's the entire definition of strategy of tension. You create chaos so you can control people. And that was like a lightning bolt to me, because that's what all of this has been for the last 100 years since the late 1800s. The Fabian Society created this polarization, this long term. They said it'd take about 100 years. There was going to be 3 world wars, and they were going to control the world. And they used those terms. They talked about a one world government in the late 1800s. This is not the WEF. This isn't all of these little tinsel things that gets flashed in front of us. This is a long-term plan to control the world. They're the people that originally came up with the saying that there was too many mouths to feed and that you had to control all of the resources. And so when you start applying all of those types of thought processes, you see exactly how we got to where we are today. The division all over the world, the creating of the Soviet Union in order to polarize, because in order to justify these types of regime change, you have to have a boogeyman. And since the post World War II, the CIA has overthrown over 90 governments. Never once have they left a thriving democracy when they left. Yeah, exactly. That's just Latin America, and
right, right.
and they even left some off. They don't have Guyana. We were in Guyana twice, and many of those have multiple different coups.
Right, exactly. Bolivia, 2019, is not on here. Oh yeah, they've had multiple. Like I said, this is just the Latin America,
Yes.
and South America. Yeah, yeah. So I just threw that up there because you hit on it. I'm like, okay, yeah, boom, there you go.
Yeah, and I could tell you stories about every single one of them and what the CIA's role in it. Because what I did after I kind of figured out all of this, I did kind of what I refer to as my round the world tour. And I took every region and I looked at all the CIA activity back to World War II. And of course, it wasn't developed in World War II or post World War II. And it wasn't just the CIA. If you understand how this thing works, you have this international syndicate because it was true. And I want to get into the Monroe Doctrine because that speaks highly. That's the justification for doing. So the Monroe Doctrine was basically formulated to say we're going to control the Western Hemisphere. And then it got broadened and broadened and broadened, and we were going to control the whole world. But they used that mentality to justify overthrowing or to, after the Spanish American War, taking Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines from the Spanish government. And all of those people had been fighting the Spanish for decades and decades. And they thought, oh my God, the Americans won, we're going to be free. We didn't free them. And this was before World War II. This was at the turn of the century. That's how we ended up with Hawaii. We overthrew the Queen of Hawaii for sugar plantations.
And a lot of people don't realize that. And when Trump mentioned we're going back to the Monroe Doctrine, or they talk about, most people are like, what the fuck is that? They don't know what the Monroe Doctrine is. They don't even know, anything about the Monroe Doctrine. So for him to say that they are capitalizing, which is what they do a lot, on ignorance. They think, oh, that's a great thing. Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine. Yeah, let's do that, right? So continue.
Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine is what was the impetus for Operation Condor. And Operation Condor, that slide you just had up, basically was all of there was about 8 of them post Vietnam. We decided that we were going to go into basically all of South America and overthrow all the governments. We were in Guatemala in 54. We were in Brazil in 63. We were in Chile in 73. We overthrew Uruguay, Paraguay, all of them. And what we did was we installed a military dictatorship in every one of them. And the CIA's kind of kissing cousin, USAID, because they're one and the same, set up a Orwellian office called the Office of Public Safety. Now, you and I would think the Office of Public Safety was about securing the public safety.
Right.
What the Office of Public Safety is they went around the United States and they recruited former police, like retired police chiefs and police officers, and they embedded them with CIA officers, and they went in and trained the national police. They actually created most of the national police forces in all of South America and Latin America. And this Office of Public Safety was the vehicle for the CIA to go in and basically co-opt their national police. And their national police was trained at the School of Americas, a place called the Taiwan's, Military Political Warfare Academy in Taiwan. Because at the time, Taiwan was still under the dictatorship of Chiang Kai-shek, the opium drug lord that the CIA had stashed in Taiwan. So all of
And
this
now these
stuff,
same people come in and they learn this stuff at what's called the War College now, right? Here in America.
well, no. I'm a
Mhm.
graduate of Air War College. We didn't learn
Okay.
any of this shit there.
No, okay.
None of it.
Okay.
But these specialized schools were set up. The one you may think about is the hemispheric security something. So in the mid 70s, the School of Americas, which was in Panama, was discovered to be training all of these terrorists, like literally people that were going part of Operation Condor. They were
Right.
going back to their country. They had learned how to torture people, they had learned how to kidnap people, and they had learned how to kill people. And so when this got discovered in congressional testimony in the mid 70s, instead of getting rid of the school, they just moved it to Fort Benning. That school is alive and well. As a matter of fact, a few months ago on a trip, I went to that school, and there was a whole bunch of Colombians walking out of the school when I walked in. And of course, Colombia is one of the hot spots for the narco trafficking.
Right.
They're the
Right.
source of 85 to 90% of all cocaine that enters the United States comes from Colombia. And we're training their officers here. And their military and their national police force are there for the protection of the narcotic trade and
Right.
basically nothing else.
Right.
So this was kind of, this rocked my world. This is not the United States that you and I grew up in, as far as knowledge wise. I mean, obviously it is the one, but knowledge wise, most Americans have no idea how nefarious that we've been. And I don't mean we collectively, because these people are not us. The CIA specifically, and I can give you many examples, have never worked for the United States government ever. They do on an organizational chart, but they don't when it comes to doing whatever the hell they want.
Right. And they don't answer to anyone. That's why, they get to do pretty much, like you say, whatever they want to do, because they have no one over them. They answer to no one. People think, well, they're under the president, they're under Homeland Security, they're under whatever department, but they're really not.
So if you go back in history and you look at some of these overthrows, they will go to the National Security Council and they will ask the president to sign a finding to assassinate a foreign head of state. And if the president doesn't agree to it, they'll do it anyway because they report to this international syndicate. And when the international syndicate, like in the Congo, in 1960, when they decided that they wanted the uranium that Patrice Lumumba, who was the first democratically elected president ever in the history of the Congo, after having been a Belgian colony for quite a while, when Patrice Lumumba entered office, he was under an obligation to Belgium. The Congo had been a Belgian colony. They were the major mining presence in the Congo. And so Patrice Lumumba needed the revenue from the uranium that the Congo owned in their ground. And they decided to approach the United States one-on-one and say, hey, I will honor Belgium's contract to sell you 100% of our uranium, but I have to cut Belgium out. We're no longer their colony. I'm a democratically elected head of state, and I'm going to honor it with you, but I want the revenue to be split between you and I. Eisenhower refused to meet with him. Vice President Richard Nixon refused to meet with him. The only person that he saw on that visit was the Secretary of State, and he told him to pound sand. He said that they were not going to alter that the proceeds were going to be split between Belgium and the United States, or Belgium and the Congo on the same appropriation that it had been before. And Patrice Lumumba said, screw you, then get the hell out of my country. And so when he told all of the Belgium officers and enlisted people they had to leave, Belgium said, we're not leaving. You can put Congolese in as enlisted people, but you're not getting rid of the officers. And Patrice Lumumba was like hell, I'm not. Okay, right. And so he ended up in the trunk of a car of a CIA agent assassinated, and then they boiled him in acid. And we only know about how he actually ended up dying, the destruction of his body, because a Belgium enlisted guy, not even that long ago, had his gold tooth from the Boiling him in acid, and he returned it to the rightful heirs of the Lumumba family.
Wow.
And yeah, so this is all history out there, but you can't find it on the normal internet. As a matter of fact, the only browser that I can use to do my research is Yandex, because it's based in Russia. Yeah, because most of this stuff, if I type in like specific names in quotations, because I know what I'm looking for, you may get one hit on a Brave browser. You'll get 50 on Yandex that tells these stories, because they're all shielded from the West. And it's a horrific story. So anyway, this whole research project that I've been on for the last 3 years that I'm obsessed with, led to me discovering these things called stay behind units. They're collectively referred to as Operation Gladio. And basically during World War II, Alan Dulles met with a German officer by the name of General Wolf. And these units at the time under Nazis were called werewolf units. And they were scattered throughout Europe. Anywhere that the Nazis had taken over, they established these werewolf units. And they were caches of weapons and people trained to be able to fall in on these caches of weapons and then do whatever mission they were given. So they look like civilians, but they're trained militia type people. Right. And so prior to the end of the war, the senior Nazi officers were looking at a way out to be saved from Nuremberg. And so General Wolf meets with Alan Dulles and an Army Major General by the name of Lyman Lemmetzger and says, hey, we got a deal for you. Here's our list of people that you have to save. And in return, we'll turn over this network to you. There was other things discussed, but that's basically the net result of it. And so it's agreed upon that they're going to do that. Well, Lyman Lemmetzger was Eisenhower's, who was the four-star general in charge of Europe at the time, or the supreme commander of Europe. Of course, he goes on and forms NATO. And why is that important? Because NATO runs the current version of Operation Gladio. So in the immediate aftermath of World War II, they stand up NATO, they stand up all of these intelligence agencies, and it's their job, the intelligence agencies, to generate funding for these stay-behind units because they're covert, so they're not officially funded on any line item in a budget. Where are you going to get the money? I mean, there's tens of thousands of these people, and they're in a whole bunch of countries, not just Europe. They expand. So they decide that the guy that the OSS was working with over in China called Chiang Kai-shek, who was the opium drug lord funding his war against Mao by selling opium, Paul Helliwell, who was a colonel at the time, gets a hold of Alan Dulles and he goes, I got a great idea. I'm watching this guy fund an entire war against Mao on the back of opium. So how about if we co-opt the opium trade and we can fund our covert operations with drugs? And Alan Dulles says, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And so they take care of Chiang Kai-shek. When he lost to Mao, they moved him to Burma, and the Burmese government eventually gets rid of him. And there's this little island off the coast of China called Formosa, and they said, hey, let's stick him there. And that way we can continue the fight against Mao from this little island. And then they changed the name to Taiwan. And that's the history of Taiwan that we never were taught in history class. Taiwan was set up with a opium drug lord, a Chinese general on a Chinese island that we're now supposed to believe isn't Chinese. And he immediately declares martial law. And all of the Formosans, of course, are like, no, we just got rid of the Japanese. We don't want you here either. And so they have this big struggle in Taiwan, and they're bayoneting Formosans in the streets and basically put down the rebellion. And during this process, he declares martial law, and Taiwan lived under martial law for the next 40 years. And MacArthur is coming back to Congress going, oh, I was just on Taiwan. It's a thriving democracy. It's so awesome. And everybody are running around with bayonets and guns. It was never a democracy.
Right. And this is what drives me crazy. I mean, the American people, us, right? We're supposed to, by our Constitution. I think we live in an unconstitutional state right now anyway. But we're supposed to be in charge. We elect our representatives. We elect the president, select whatever you want to say about that. But but if history teaches us anything, and if anyone is noticing, anyone paying attention, anyone that's outside of the matrix, right? I have people calling me mentally ill because I'm disagreeing with Trump right now. But but if it teaches us anything, and Gladio is proof. What you're bringing up is total proof. It is that people that have been for decades. I mean, because Gladio wasn't exposed until like around 1990, right? So, but around 1990, so I mean, they're operating in the shadows, who don't answer the voters, don't answer the Congress, and barely answer to the president, if ever, if then. And they're involved in assassinations, drug trafficking, I'm sure child trafficking, I'm sure harvesting of organs, right? I mean, so think about that. For decades, we have the American people have been getting duped and raped. I mean, for years, taxpayer funded secret armies, weapons caches, covert operations that democratic governments didn't even know existed, right? So they want us to believe, and we're supposed to believe, that ended, right? There's nothing like that happening now. But until this Venezuela question, I have a question, right? This Venezuela operation, is this part of Operation Gladio? I mean, because we're told it's about capturing a dictator because he's filling the country with fentanyl and drugs, where only 1% of, if anyone, you can just freaking Google it, right? Only 1% of the drugs that's in America come from freaking Venezuela. You
If
know,
that, they kicked out
right? If
the EPA.
that,
Yeah.
I mean, so and who really made the decision? Did Trump make this decision? Who authorized it? I mean, he's the front guy. He's saying it,
Whenever you
but
use the
who really said it?
military, he definitely was involved because we're talking apples and oranges here. If they use the
Mhm.
military, the question that we should be asking is whose intelligence were they using?
Okay, the the Mossad, I'm
Now,
sure,
I'm
CIA,
I'm
MI6.
so and let's tackle that for just a second. I know there's a lot of people that comes to kind of their first go-to thing is Israel's behind everything and Mossad runs the world. I don't believe that at all. If you look at the formation of this structure, MI6 was the only existing national intelligence organization prior to World War II. And if you look at the formation of the CIA in 47, Israel in 48, Mossad in 49, there is a direct descendancy of the worldwide intelligence organization which collectively work together. You could not do Gladio without all of them.
Right, right,
So there is there has been, I think that's changed under President Trump, but there prior to President Trump's presidency, there was a pecking order, and MI6 was at the top of the pyramid. The rest of them operated collectively because in every one of these coups, whether it was overthrowing Iran in 1953, in the Guatemala in 54, you're going to find a combination of multiple intelligence agencies. Like we worked with the French in Vietnam. So they work
right.
collaboratively. Now they do
Mhm.
have some type of, like children will, they'll have squabbles among themselves of
Right,
who's going to be leading on this or whether or not we want to do this before this or whatever. So they're not like a hive mind, but they operate like they are. Once the decisions are made, they collectively work together because it's these people are working for these people. You
right.
don't have just rogue intelligence people out there going haphazardly overthrowing governments. They do it very strategically for control of resources that these people benefit from.
Right.
And the best example, in addition to uh, the Congo, if you go around and you look at and that's kind of something that I've become, anytime that there's a hot spot, the very first thing I do is research what resources do they have because
Right,
somebody
well, yeah, right, that's
because somebody
who wants
wants.
who
Um,
wants that stuff, right, exactly.
and
Because it's all about resources, just like this thing here, in Venezuela, when we first talked about, I'm like, that's some bullshit. That's bullshit what President Trump is saying, and I'll be the first one. I'm a Trump supporter. I've moved away a little since, this cycle because of a lot of the things that he's doing, a lot of things that he said, I just don't agree with, right? And so, with him saying, "Oh, it's about," I'm like, "That's bullshit off the rip. That's bullshit. It's about oil. There's only one thing that we want from Venezuela, mainly, and that's the oil. It's the dirty crude that Venezuela has that we need to fill our refineries because the sweet crude and the light gas and the light oil that we get out of our ground, that it doesn't make it can't be refined in our major refineries that's on the coast because that takes the deep sludge, dirty oil, you want to call it, or slow, and that's what Venezuela has. Okay,
so, Chief,
so
let me ask you something.
okay,
Putting your military hat on, if you have a bunch of people that you are training and you want to figure out how far along in the training they actually are. If you throw something out to them And every single person there are kind of looking at each other, and they all do exactly the same thing. You don't have anybody that stands out and goes, "No, that's bullshit."
Mhm.
Um, if you need everybody in that group to comprehend what you're trying to teach them before you go to the next step, there's a certain amount of kind of fresh meat that you're going to throw out there in order to judge the where they're at in their progress,
Where they
right?
are, right, right, where they are, who's on
So
board, who's trashing.
right. And so for me, whenever Trump says something or Rubio or whatever, and it's absolutely ludicrous stupid,
Right.
I and I may be wrong. I'm perfectly willing to admit that. I don't believe that he says things like throwing out the Monroe Doctrine to figure out if everybody's going to placidly nod their head in the MAGA movement. I think they're honestly judging or reviewing the knowledge of the people in order to be able to move on to the next
Move
thing.
forward.
And
Right.
if you don't understand what the Monroe Doctrine was all about, and I see it among people that I consider my friends whose
Mhm.
shows I've been on, and they're all out there like, manna from heaven. Oh my God, the Monroe Doctrine's back. I'm like,
Right. Oh, it's beautiful.
wow. Do you know the kind of havoc
Uh,
that the Monroe Doctrine has bought this country? So I don't follow along when things are said that are just like I just replied. Not that they ever see them. I don't care if they do or not. The people that's in my group does. The comment that JD Vance threw out there today about fentanyl and the drugs and all that other stuff. There's no
mhm.
fentanyl in Venezuela. I'm sorry,
Venezuela.
there's just not.
Absolutely zero. None.
So
Absolute zero.
so we know that and if you do the research, the DEA was thrown out of Venezuela around 2005, and everybody goes, "Well, that's because they were doing drugs." I'm sorry, but if you know anything about the DEA is the one doing drugs.
Right.
So, in all of my research, the DEA, as a matter of fact, let's talk about Iran Contra. That happened during you and I's lifetime.
Right.
The DEA was running the Contra drug network
Mhm.
from Costa Rica. It was
Mhm.
in the DEA's office. They were in charge of
Mhm.
it. And the one guy, I'm not going to remember his name. It started with a C. The one guy, and it's in Gary Webb's book, Dark Alliance. The one guy that stood up and started sending cables to his supervisor in the States going, "Holy shit, we're in on it. Holy shit, we're in on it." Ilapango, however you say that, Ilapango, the air base that was in El Salvador.
Yeah,
Um,
El Pino. Yeah.
yeah, they're running it out of there, the air
Right.
operations. He's like, "I'm
Mhm.
standing here looking at the hangar. They're loading drugs on it." And
Mhm.
you know what they did to that guy? They took him out of the country. They stuck him in a hole until he retired, and they made his life miserable.
Yep.
The recent announcement, I don't know if you caught it, where the DEA assistant director was just arrested for money laundering drug money.
Right. I saw that. Yep. I
Okay,
saw that.
Robert Sensei, the guy that was arrested with him, that you can't find his name anywhere unless you look at the indictment because it's not in the news. He
Mhm.
ran the Contra money laundering part of it. There was a whole bunch of it, but he was
Mhm.
part of the money laundering for Contra. The man
Yep.
actually went to jail and was pardoned by President Bush, Mr. CIA himself, when he became president. He worked for President Bush money laundering. He's in an operation with a recently retired DEA agent. And do you know what that guy did in the DEA? He was in charge of finding money laundering for the drugs. And
Isn't
he
it
was
crazy?
arrested for money laundering drug money.
Drug money.
So anything that you hear from the DEA is to be taken with a grain of salt. It's literally an organization. So, and this is what I keep asking people from the I mean, we started in the late 1940s controlling the drug operations all around the world by co-opting Chiang Kai-shek. Opium, where did they sell the opium initially? In Harlem, in New York. That was their primary focus, was to put opium in Harlem to destroy the Black family. Where did the
Right.
drugs go from the Nicaraguans that was thrown out after the CIA lost control of Nicaragua when Somoza was the military dictator there that we installed? He put those, CIA brought the Nicaraguan, the corrupt ones, to Miami.
Mhm.
Blanton and the other guy, his name starts with an M. Blanton went to Los Angeles, and the other guy went
That's
to
so
San
true.
Francisco, and
Right.
they are the ones that supplied all of the crack cocaine to Freeway
That's so
Ricky
true.
and
Right.
destroyed the Black
Right.
community in Los Angeles.
Right.
And they target Black neighborhoods to
Mhm.
destroy your religious culture. And it is a targeted hit
Right.
on Black
Exactly.
America. And then they incarcerate these people. And then what did they do? They put in Muslim imams into all of the prisons and try to convert them to be
Right.
radical Islamic terrorists.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
people don't wake up and understand,
And
that's
they
the
don't know that people don't see that because they think, okay, well, because they're thinking, no, my party, my government wouldn't do that. And I was living in California at the time. I was stationed in California at the time
I
when
was
they started
too.
the crack. When they started the crack epidemic, right? When it started coming down. I was in San Diego, but I had friends. I traveled up to LA a lot. And that was the whole thing. And they always pick out a dude like Freeway Freeway Ricky Ross was his name, right? I mean, there's a
Yes,
story. I mean, you guys, I mean, there's a documentary about him, how they
yes.
use Freeway Ricky Ross and and everything. Yeah, and that's what they do. They destroy Black communities. I mean, you look at what was the movie called uh should I forget? But it's with Ice Cube and them guys. I mean, they talk about the crack cocaine epidemic and with NWA, all the rap and stuff like that. I mean, that was true. All of that was true because it was happening right there, and they saw it, and and they brought it out. But and it was always just drug dealing. No, it was the CIA. These were Reagan's people. This was Oliver North. I mean, Oliver North was the fall guy. Did he go to prison? Did he go to jail? Did anything happen to any of these people? That was doing it. And
Fox
then
News commentator.
yeah, exactly. And then right after that, what did we get? We get Bill Clinton in the 1994 crime bill to put all of these people in prison.
The
To put
guy
all these
from Mena
dealers
that oversaw Mena, Arizona, where Barry Seal was
right,
flying the
Barry
drugs
Seal,
in.
right, right,
Yeah, that same
exactly.
governor. Yeah, we're gonna
Right,
make
that
him
same
president.
guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Same guy.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, and people don't understand that, and so it gets me so frustrated when people talk about the Black community, Black. I'm like, look at what they've done to the Black community.
Yeah.
Look at what they've done. You have no clue what they've done to Chicago. They up in Chicago, they run guns through Chicago. They leave pallets and crates of guns on the railroad track open at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning so the gangs can come and get the guns off the track. That's not by mistake. That's by design and on purpose. I knew some gang members of, oh yeah, we get our guns right off the railroad track. They just stop the car and it's full of guns and we just go get them, and people don't realize that. But all of this is in connection to all of it. Like you say, the Operation Gladio, to the stress thing. It's like,
So
man,
when you import these, so and let's so when were you in California?
I was there from 85 to 90. No, I actually was there from 85 to 96. I left California in 96. So
Okay,
about
so I
12 years.
was there from 87 to 90 in Los
Okay.
Angeles at Los Angeles Air Force Base. Um,
Okay.
and so I saw this firsthand. I saw the
Mhm.
drive-by shooting. I had a drive-by shooting happen right in front of me, headed south on the 10 freeway. I saw this explosion coming out of the car window of a car, and the other car, it's like 6 lanes of traffic. I was like in lane
Mhm.
number 5. The car was right in front of me. I was coming up behind him. And then this car over here, like in the second lane, just goes veering off into the Jersey barriers. And I'm going by, and there's like the window is shattered. And I'm
Wow.
thinking, oh my God, oh my God. Yeah, it happened right in front of me. So of course I'm like putting on the brakes. I'm like, I'm not following you, dude. Just go on. But
Right.
we were not allowed to have guns out there at the time. I had a gun. I
Mhm.
didn't go anywhere without one
Right.
because there was a lot of nefarious shit going on out there.
Yep.
I had a the very I had not even been there a week, maybe 2 weeks. I had ordered some curtains for an apartment that I had just rented, and they were coming in at the mall. So I was told, you get your safety briefing of the no go places in the community, and they kind
Mhm.
of had a map up there of places that you don't go. And so Hawthorne Boulevard was kind of like the boundary of everything this side's good, don't go over here. And so I didn't realize they meant like literally the road Hawthorne. I thought Hawthorne was fine. But the mall was on the other side of Hawthorne, like on Hawthorne Boulevard, but on the other side of the
Mhm.
road, right by the base. And I'm like, okay, so I can go there and pick up my curtains from JC Penney's. I got out in the parking garage and I had a black police officer come up to me and tell me to get back in my van. And
Oh,
I looked
wow.
at him and I was like, I got to pick up my curtains. I'm a lieutenant. I'm just this was my
Yeah.
first week of active duty as a lieutenant, and I looked
Oh,
at him.
shit.
I had my
Your
uniform,
name. Uh-huh.
and I looked at him and I said, I got to get my curtains." And he goes, "You're not going in there." And I'm like, "But my curtains are in there." And he goes, "You just need to get in your van." And then it dawned on me what he was saying.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I got in my van and I left. But the Compton Mall was right on my way
Right.
home. I lived in Long Beach, and it's like I didn't know. I didn't know that was Compton. There's no signs on the 405 that says here, exit here
Right.
for
Here's Compton. Right.
so I get off, I go in there. There was a Sears there. I had something to pick up. I picked it up. I went to my house in Long Beach and I'm turning on the news, making dinner, and I find out there was a shooting in the mall at the other end of the
Mhm.
mall that I was just in. So I saw firsthand the violence that this brings to communities. And so, again, fast forward all of these years, I never even gave it a thought that that was my own government doing it. You
Right.
know, it's crazy, but
Does it piss you off? I'll let you continue, but does
like
it
a
piss
little
you off?
bit.
You did 30 years, I did 27 years, and to find out this shit, right? After we've served this country, put our life on the line, we've done all this stuff, right? And then we find out, well, fuck, it's our own government doing this shit, and we've been an accessory to it, basically. You know?
So I don't consider myself an accessory because the chain of events that happens is the CIA basically makes up shit. And they feed this made up bullshit into the National Security Council, into the chairmen
Mhm.
of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, into the war fighters. Um, and now we know in hindsight that many times there has been the DIA, which is a 3-star billet, which means
Mhm.
nothing, and then you've got the NSA guy, um, have oftentimes disagreed with the CIA as far as the intelligence goes, and
Right.
they're given 0 weight at all. So whatever the CIA's made up intelligence is going to be because they're feeding it to the people that want it on the National Security Council and the selected president because we don't elect them. And so they're giving them the excuse they want to go do whatever it is this oligarch international syndicate wants to have done. So they're all in alignment. We're the odd man out. Our only job is if the job is too big for the CIA to do the overthrow covertly, is they will do a false flag to get us involved. That's what happened in Vietnam. Things were going sideways with them. They weren't going to be able to control Ho Chi Minh, and they needed us. So they just pretend that, this ship's getting attacked, and we all buckle up and go over there and die for them.
Right.
That's the legit. So I don't consider myself an accessory to it at all. I don't
Well, I
know.
didn't mean
Yeah,
maybe that was the wrong one, not necessary, but I mean,
we're a
we
tool. We're a
we are
tool.
too for it. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a better way. Not
Yeah.
essentially a
We're a
tool.
tool in their toolbox when the job's
Right,
too big for them.
right. I mean, because here's a story. You mentioned the DEA, and you mentioned running the drugs, and they were, doing all the drug running and stuff, right? So, in a command that I was in, and, I won't mention it or anything like that, but I was a flyer. We flew missions worldwide, logistic missions. Some were secret, some were not, but most of them, and some of them were, like SEALs, worldwide movement, stuff like that. Well, on one mission, we had this mission. Something happened to the DEA's plane, and we got the mission to go down to Louisiana. It was a hop from Louisiana back to Miami, right? And we weren't told what the mission was. We just had to go pick up these agents, right? So when we got there and we hit the ground, then we get the thing. Okay, well, we can't touch the cargo, or we can't touch what they're loading into the plane, right? Into the baggage compartment of the plane. We can't be back there. We can't, touch any of it. We have to stay on the plane, right? Well, come to find out, they loaded up a belly full of drugs
Yep.
that they had from Louisiana, and we transported it to Miami, and they offloaded it in Miami or
Yes.
whatever, and did whatever they went to do, so yeah, I'm definitely a witness to that,
Yes.
to what it was, and how they used the military to move whatever. I mean, and
Yes.
by whatever means necessary,
Yeah.
so
So
that was true story, and that's just to come on top of you mentioning the DEA for
yes.
those that, "Oh, the DEA don't do that." Well, yeah, they
Yes,
do.
they do.
Yes, they do.
And so if you kind of expand upon that, if you're running drugs and you're running weapons, like illicit weapons, not registered weapons, what better way to do that than having a war? So if I want to get weapons to Southeast Asia and I just happen to have a Vietnam War, that gives me empty airplanes going back to put drugs on. And there's going to be a lot of weapons in the theater that, if I take a few of them, they're never going to be noticed. So if you start looking into this, what I found out is there's like three prongs to this monster. There's human trafficking, drug trafficking, and weapons trafficking. And
Mhm.
those three things make up a wheel. And the thing that makes the wheel go down the road is grease, which is blackmail. And so if I can use these things, whether they're drugs, human trafficking, like, child trafficking or whatever, to implicate people that's in this network, then my network will keep running because I've got the grease to keep the wheel in perpetual motion.
Right.
And that's literally the way the entire operation works. And it works a lot better for them. Like, there was whatever it was, billions of dollars worth of weapons left in Afghanistan. Well, where are they all at? Well,
88
there's an
billion.
entire black market out
It's
there
the
now.
entire black market in the Afghans who were still paying $40 million a week to their, you know, they sold them. Of course, they're selling it. I mean, $88 billion worth of
Yeah.
equipment that we just left there.
Yeah.
So, and and I still don't know the answer to why. I mean, because normally, things that we leave or can't fly out of a region, we blow up, right? Because
Yes.
we don't want the enemy to get their hands on it. We don't want
Correct.
anything being reverse engineered. A lot of that stuff on the planes and top secret,
Yes.
secret. I mean, all that. But we
Yes.
didn't. We just left it.
Yes. And every bit of that is on a black market somewhere because
Mhm.
someone needed it and they made it happen.
So did we leave it because of that?
Oh, 100%.
Because that was part of the deal with
So
the Biden
what
administration
happens,
or whoever.
yeah, in Vietnam, um, Paul Helliwell and all of this whole cast of characters, William Casey, all of the guys that
Mhm.
grow up and be somebody in the CIA are all there in Vietnam. Felix Rodriguez, the guy that Tucker Carlson had on his show. He was a Brigade 2506 Cuban exile. That's our Gladio, by the way. He was part of Vietnam. And so they're shipping in. So when Vietnam start scaling down, what we say we're doing is we're selling our excess weapons to the local governments in order for them to be able to protect themselves. Those weapons ended up in Thailand for drug runners. Those
Right.
weapons ended up all over Southeast Asia. Some of them, and people probably don't know the real story of Korea, but Korea has a KCIA. I mean, it's even named after the CIA
Yeah.
because they set it up. And Korea was, after the Korean War, they installed a dictator there. They didn't have a democracy for decades.
Right.
And that guy was controlled by the CIA. They had stay behind units set up prior to the Korean War kicking off. The Korean War incident that created the war was promulgated by a stay behind unit going over the agreed upon boundary in
Parallel. Right.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, you find this reoccurring theme of the stay behind units being used to instigate whatever action they want. So they need a war in Korea in order to continue the military industrial complex around the world, not just in the United States, in Sweden and in the UK and Germany. And so when you're trying to rebuild an economy, the best way to do it is with a war. Because it generates all kinds of revenue, jobs, all of that stuff. So and I tell people that all the time. We've not been at war since World War II, but we've
Been in
been
perpetual war.
perpetual war since 1950 when we went into
Right.
Korea.
Mhm.
And we literally never came home because as soon as Korea was done, we were over here. That was in 53. We're overthrowing the Iranian government in 54. We overthrew the Guatemala government. Then we're over in Vietnam with this expandable, capability that lasts for the next 20 years. And we go from there into Afghanistan through the proxy Pakistan in the 80s. We build out the entire thing. And so I don't know if you know this because this was just dumbfounding to me. So the buildup of the Northern Alliance during the 80s,
Mhm. Mhm.
the one entity in Afghanistan that the CIA couldn't co-opt basically becomes the Taliban.
Right.
They wouldn't have anything to do with the CIA.
Right.
And so the Soviet Union's gone at the end of the 80s. And of course, it eventually falls apart. During that time, from the 1990 to 2000, the Taliban decides they're out of the opium business.
Mhm.
If you pull a chart up and look at the cocaine production, the opium production,
Right.
not cocaine, opium.
Opium. Mhm. It's
Um,
about the same amount from Afghanistan that it is from Venezuela right now. Like 0.
well, so it's at all time while we were in there in
While
the
we were
80s.
there, all-time high.
Yeah. So then we leave and the Taliban bans all
Mhm.
production of opium. So
Right.
by the year 2000, they're down to the lowest level of opium that has
Right.
ever been in the last recorded amount of
Right.
time.
Right.
And then what happened? 9/11 happened,
9/11.
and we were right back in Afghanistan, and what happened? Oh, well, we had to
Opium.
attack the Taliban because they were protecting
The
Osama
opium.
bin Laden, who was a CIA agent not even in Afghanistan. He's over here in Pakistan. But we have all these sightings of him, to justify going back into Afghanistan. And then what happens? Not only does opium production scale back up, it surpasses the highest level ever while the US military is there.
Mhm.
How the
I
hell
mean,
did
well, because there were videos, really one video, they didn't let it get out too much, but the Marines were protecting the poppy
yes,
fields
yes,
from the Taliban who was torching them because
yeah,
they knew that they were selling. Yeah,
yes,
I mean, that was real. And you talk about Osama bin Laden, and you talk about the Afghanistan and the Iran Contra and all that stuff. Well, a lot of people, if they go back, that whole thing with the Russians and the Mujahideen that was fighting the Russians, I mean, all of that. is part of that too, because the Mujahideen was led by who? Osama bin Laden. We armed them. We
Yes.
gave them their weapons. We gave them the money to fight against the Russians during that time in there as well. And so
And
he was always a CIA asset, all the
then
way
the
through.
Mujahideen turns into Al Qaeda and
Al
ISIS.
Qaeda and ISIS, absolutely, that's right, and that's why they had to leave Afghanistan, because the Taliban wouldn't have that, and so they had to leave Afghanistan. And of course, okay, we have to get back in Afghanistan. Almost like now, it seems like, okay, we've been at this tussle with Venezuela and Chavez and Maduro and all that for the past 20 years. Almost like Afghanistan, we've been in tuggle with them. We're trying to get back in there because we need something out of there, and now we're going back in Venezuela because of the oil or whatever the case is. So it's all
So,
it's all connected and always have been connected. I mean, it's
so I
really
have
crazy
come
when you think about
away, yeah, I've come away with the opinion that anybody we were taught growing up were bad was not bad,
it.
and
Was not
anybody
bad.
that you were taught was good is probably bad.
I say we've been lied to our entire
Yes,
life.
yes,
Our entire life we've been lied to about everything, not just about some things,
and that's
but
why
about
I
everything.
find it interesting that all of these younger people like to accuse people of our generation of destroying the country. Well, we didn't have handheld computers. We didn't have
Right.
the ability to do this research.
Right.
And anybody that reported on it was murdered.
Was murdered. Absolutely.
So there wasn't a
We
lot.
had 3 channels of news that was controlled.
Yes.
We had
Yes.
ABC, NBC, CBS, that's all we had. We and it was
Yes.
totally controlled, and if you didn't watch the news, you really didn't know. You had to gain your knowledge by the street knowledge. You see what's happening on the street because everybody's addicted to crack cocaine. You don't know why. Freeway Ricky Ross is the man. He's dealing, and all these people, they're jockeying for position. Oh, okay, now they can make money, and now they're pitting it together. Now we have all these gangs, all these gang wars, but they're not even the ones that's perpetuated and started it. But that's what we see because that's the only thing we know. And the internet, like you say, the computers, the internet, the information that we have, and like you say, you have to go to Yandex to even find a lot of the stuff that they don't have here. And I tell people, I'm like, it's two things, right? That I found out. Doing my own research and going back is this is that and General Patton was right. We fought the wrong enemy in World War II. He said we fought the wrong enemy, and he said we should have went to Russia because those were the Bolsheviks that was fomenting all of the destruction in that area. The Jews, they killed most of the Jews. It wasn't really Hitler or Nazism or anything like that. But I go back, and Hitler was a nationalist. Basically what we would call, I guess, a guy that loved his country, wanted his country to do well. He wanted to put Germany first. That's basically what a lot of people say. Now I want America first. I'm an America only guy now. I don't even want intervention. I want everybody to start our business. If you're not fucking with America, we're not gonna mess with you. Type deal. We do have the best and the brightest, no matter what Trump has said. We don't need all the HB1. We can sustain ourselves. And have treaties or trade treaties with whoever we want to, like normal. But all of that stuff about the bad guys, like you say, it is not true. That I found
So
is not really true.
let me push back a little bit on the Hitler thing. Hitler was a made man from the same funders that created the Bolsheviks. So he was controlled. He was funded by the IG Farbens, the Dulles
Mhm.
brothers, who had done the business with Sullivan and Cromwell, with the Rockefellers, the Whitneys, and all of the people in the Northeast. He didn't develop on his own.
Oh
Um,
no, they were funding him, and they were
yes.
funding both
So
sides of
I
the
don't
war on
think
that.
he
Right,
was a
they were
good
funding.
guy. And
Mhm.
I would push back a little bit on the amount of information. I understand Patton's sentiment in what he said, but the entire World War II, when you go back and start researching that, there were several times when Stalin was at whether it was Yalta or wherever, that they all collectively agreed to do something. And then the British and Roosevelt would go off and do something completely different.
Hmm. Right.
Um, and they were constantly doing that to Stalin. Do I think Stalin's a good guy? No, I don't. But at
I
the
think
time,
they did it to both Stalin and Patton, to be honest.
yeah. Um, but they kept basically stabbing Stalin in the back because it was their intent after Hitler was contained that they wanted to turn the full force of this steady state military industrial complex on Russia. And it goes
Mhm.
back to the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society had already developed a map of what the world was going to look like when it was under one world government. They were going to have a pan Europe, a pan America, a pan Asia, a pan Arabia. And then somebody asked them, well, what are you going to do with the African continent? They're not on there anywhere. Well, they're going to be the workers for all of these other people.
Imagine that.
They literally said that.
Hmm.
So if you understand that, their definition of Europe was the Ural Mountains, which is what divides Russia from the Asian part of Russia and the European part. So they have to have Russia in order to get their one world government set up. So
Right.
they were never not going to attack or contain the Soviet Union because they need it divided, just like they did Yugoslavia and
Mhm.
every other country that they broke up when they say they've never changed boundaries since World War II, which is just completely ludicrous. They've done it all the time. You know, basically, if you go back before World War II, the only reason that you have Panama is because we stole it from Colombia. That was originally part of Colombia.
Right.
But we just decided that we wanted to build the canal there. Well, it was John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles representing a company in Paris, in France, that had started the Panama Canal and went broke. And they wanted some of their money back. Congress had already appropriated money to build a canal in Nicaragua.
Hmm.
I didn't know any of this.
Right.
So they created a PR campaign and lobbied the Congress to stop the funding on the Nicaraguan canal. It had already started. And to go along with the Dulles brothers' plan to basically take Panama and build the canal there so they could bail out their buddy over here is paying them big
Right.
bucks in
Paris. Hmm.
France.
Bail
And
out France.
France actually used African colony
Hmm.
people to build 40% of the Panama Canal before that company went broke.
Right.
And I'm like, how do you go broke when you have free labor? They were literally shipping the people over here. I'm like, how'd that even happen? But however it happened, they went broke. And so Colombia wanted like $20 million for the 10-mile stretch and the canal and all that other stuff. So we decided, screw that, we'll just take it. And so they stage a little coup down there and
Right.
they plant a new president there. He put a flag in the ground. The United States immediately recognized it and said, oh, look, here's a new country. That's
Right.
the birth of Panama.
Hmm. Yeah, and and that's the thing. We look at and President Trump is basically repeating, "Well, we're going to take the Panama Canal back." Well, we took it in the first place, so yeah, I guess might as well take it back, right? You know, I mean, it's so if you want to say historical on some of the things that he's saying, though, taking the Panama Canal back, the Monroe Doctrine, just all this, and like you said, most people don't even know the history of how we got it in the first place, or what took
So
place in the first place. So,
So now that we've talked a little bit about the Monroe Doctrine and the fact that it basically says that the Western Hemisphere belongs to the United States and we get to approve everything that happens in it, right? That's basically
it
it.
belongs to us, right? Hmm. And now
Okay.
he's threatening Greenland, by the way, and I'll ask you about that in a minute because I guess that's going to be next, that part. But go ahead.
So so what happens if there's a czar doctrine and Russia decides tomorrow that part of their czar doctrine
Mhm.
is restoring basically the former Russian
Russian.
territories, which includes Ukraine.
Right.
And he goes in there and snatches Zelensky. What leg does the United States have to stand on? Okay,
Absolutely zero
all
now.
right.
And
So then
so
what happens the day after that when Xi goes into
absolutely
Taiwan
zero.
and
Absolutely zero. We
snatches
have
that
no standing.
president under the
Right.
Mao doctrine that
Right.
that's my island because it
That's
was
our
their island.
island. That's our island. It belongs to China. Absolutely nothing.
So,
We have no legs to stand on now with the international community. Zero. To
but
me, that's my opinion.
but hear me out here.
Hmm.
If they did that, so my contention is under this big strategy of tension that the Fabians had,
Hmm.
they created hotspots where
Right.
they could have war on demand. Taiwan was one of those hotspots
That's one.
because
Right.
as soon as Chiang Kai-shek was gone, which they controlled, so he could provoke a war anytime they wanted. But now,
Hmm.
eventually he died. His son was in office for a little bit, then he's gone, and now they have somewhat of a democracy. But they when that happened, when they had their big change out of the Chang dynasty, it was at that exact moment that Intel moved chip manufacturing there. And
Right.
so now we've got our new critical element
Yeah.
to be able to
Uh-huh.
have to say, "Oh my god, we can never let something happen to
Right.
Taiwan." But what's
Right.
happening now is we've diversified the chip manufacturing, and in my opinion,
Mm.
I think something like that's going to happen to eliminate the strategy of tension where Taiwan is going to be part of China.
Mhm.
And if the preemptive thing is going down and snatching Maduro for that to happen, and then the same thing with Ukraine.
Okay. Mhm.
Putin now has the ground to stand on to go snatch him.
Right.
And what's Trump going to say? I can't do anything about it because I just did it.
Well, but will we do that? But I mean, I agree with you 100%. And I thought about that as well, and I actually put that on a post. So now, you can just go snatch up Zelensky, and if anyone wants to go snatch up, Netanyahu because he's a war criminal, they could do that if they wanted to, if they dared, go in there. I mean, but what keeps anybody from, from doing that at this point? And will we continue to be like, okay, well, we have to protect Taiwan now? But I mean, how can we do that? How can
We
even
couldn't.
though even though people, I call them the cult, but even though people will, say, well, we have to, okay, let's do it, or if he says we can't do it, I mean, they'll be on board. But it's like we can't. We literally have no leg, no leverage to stand on to defend Taiwan any longer, to defend Ukraine any longer at all. Zero.
0.
And was that the plan? And you're saying, okay, that may have been us doing that may have been the plan to make it happen, right? So what would people think if it happens and we don't defend Taiwan? Then what? Trump's a punk, he's a bitch, America. We're just gonna let Taiwan go back to China.
Yes,
Okay,
we
do we want to really go to? I mean, see what I'm
We ha
saying? I
we
mean, so
there's no way that it
is
from a
this Trump's out?
military
Is this
perspective,
Trump's out? Right? Because 2026 is coming. Okay, is this part of Trump's out? We may lose midterms. He may be a lame duck president. Okay, so let me start this, right? Let me be that guy. I'm on my way out anyway, to okay, they get Taiwan, they get Ukraine. I'm out. Big deal. I've made my money. I got my crypto. I got my, businesses tied in with fusion, whatever the
see,
case is, you know.
do you know damn good and well that the United States has no ability to defend Taiwan?
No, absolutely. I know that for a
Yeah,
fact.
the entire thing is a charade.
Yes, it is. It is.
So, I also believe that because of the timing of the creation and the whole history of the creation of Israel, that Israel was part of the original strategy of
The
tension as
strategy of
well.
tension. Absolutely. Right.
Because as long as
Mhm.
Israel is where it is, you control the Middle East.
Right.
If you need somebody bopped, pick up the phone.
Right.
And anybody that says anything about it, you just call them an anti-Semite. It's literally the best strategy that they could have ever come up with. And I think all of that changed. And the one thing that I point people to, well, two things. The Abraham Accords of collectively
Correct.
getting the other Middle East countries together and then basically forcing Israel to recognize it, number one. Number two, was the recent executive order that was signed that guarantees Qatar's safety with the full backing of the American government after Israel lobbed that missile in.
Not the missile in, right.
He's like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, no, we're not playing that," because they're trying to provoke, stabilization in
Right,
the Middle East, and
right.
he's like, "Yeah, do it again. Do it again." And what was cracking me up is all of these MAGA influencers, talking about, "Oh my god, they're building a base, Qatar is building a base in Idaho."
Yeah, yeah, right in my backyard, about an hour away.
Pilot training, come on.
Come on.
We train foreign forces. We have I had Libyans and,
Mhm.
uh, who is the other? Oh, Jordanians in
Right.
my maintenance school when I was a tech school instructor.
Mhm.
We trained the foreign forces,
Mhm.
Muslims, in American schools and have been
Right,
since the '70s when I was doing it.
right.
Um, so the whole, blowing that out of proportion and but I found it very interesting, as people telling us how, Qatar is like this big, terrorist, funder and has all of this terrorist stuff. We have the largest presence in all of the Middle East in Qatar. There's
In
over
Qatar,
10.
yeah, I've been there. I've stayed there for a month at a
Yeah,
time right there in Qatar at our Qatar Air Base there.
yeah.
You know, it's
I would
huge,
have
and,
felt much safer in Qatar than I
I
ever
I
did in Saudi Arabia.
I was just about to say that. I felt the safest in Qatar than anywhere in the Middle East, whether I was in Tel Aviv, whether I was in Saudi Arabia, whether shit, hell, in Italy, in Sigonella, really, I felt safer there than anywhere, to be
And when
honest.
when did you go to Sigonella?
Oh shit, I spent so much time in Sigonella. I was back and forth because we actually deaded out of Sigonella from '97 in the squadrons that I was in when I was flying. Um, from '97 to my last deployment, probably in Signella, was 2006. So yeah, I
So
spent a lot of
the
time there.
really bad time in Sigonella was leading up to the revelation that Operation Gladio existed, because
Yeah,
I was
because
there
Italy was the main focus of that, right?
whole
Of
well, they all had a similar program. The only reason that we think it focalized around Italy is because 'cause they're the only ones that did about a 10-year investigation into how
Mhm.
big it really was.
Right.
All of the rest of them looked exactly the same. They were all big. They all had I think at the end of the day, they discovered that Italy had over 400 weapon caches of, automatic rifles, C4 explosives, money, and comm equipment in these caches
Right.
buried all over the country. But what they didn't want, so it got revealed in 1990. I was there from 90 to 93.
Oh,
Um,
wow, okay.
I used to have to go to Sigonella for the Air Force detachment that was there, the MAC terminal that's there.
Yep, yep.
Um, so because my test monitor for enlisted promotions was a master sergeant, I had to go to the comm site in Naples and then to Sigonella to test the Air Force people for senior in chief E8 and E9. And
Okay.
so twice a year, I made a round robin to test the people for promotions. And I am with you on the scariness because in the lead up to that release, in the 1980s,
Mhm.
any reporter that was reporting on all of these mysterious, murders or bombings,
False flags, yeah, yeah,
all yes, all of them orchestrated by Gladio units, killing multiple people at train stations and banks
right.
and stuff like that. If you started asking too many questions, they killed you. They so after I got there, the first year I was there was 5 people in Sicily, On the court steps, 2 judges and I think 3 prosecutors murdered in cold blood because they were hearing one of the cases that was involving some of the Gladio operators. And they didn't even know what Gladio was at that time. This was, kind of just
Right,
breaking.
because it just came out. It was just breaking
Yes.
out with
Yeah.
who's the prime minister that started that?
Andriotti.
Andriotti. Yeah, right. Andriotti started, and it had just started, in the '90s. So hell yeah, they were running scared, man. I mean, because these, the paramilitaries, they launched investigations all across Europe, so they didn't know really where it was coming from,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and
everybody else
everything.
everybody else in all of Europe, when
Right.
Andriotti came out, so he briefed the Senate on the 2nd of August.
I mean, and for those that don't know, as far as the country, we're talking Italy, we're talking Belgium, France, Germany, Greece, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Spain, Turkey. All of those countries were involved.
Yes.
And I mean, even non-NATO countries like what is at that time
Sweden,
anyway,
Norway, and
Austria,
Denmark.
Finland, right, yeah, all of those. So
William Casey
it was
actually set
huge.
those 3 countries up. Finland, Denmark, and Sweden were set up personally by William
Right,
Casey.
right.
So, and actually, Turkey had one of the most vicious ones. Theirs was called Grey Wolves. One of the Grey Wolf operators is the one that shot John Paul II at the Vatican.
Mm.
That was a Gladio operator
There's the Gladio guy. Okay.
out of Turkey. So much of the violence and domestic events, and of course, these units were set up under the guise of fighting communists, if they ever get
Right.
invaded. But they were never used for that. They were always used for domestic targeting, for killing domestic citizens of your own country. And so one of the things that, and it took me a little while because I'm a little slow, about a year into this, I read the third book that I read about all of this was Daniel Ganser's book called NATO Secret Army. And in it, he said that all of NATO countries had to sign a secret agreement that they would set these programs up. And so, I'm taking in so much information at the time. It took me about 9 months more, and I'm sitting around going, wait a minute, we're a NATO country. Who is our Gladio people?
Right.
If
Right.
everybody had to have them. So if you go back and you look at every terrorist event in the United States, whether it's the Weather Underground or the Oklahoma bombing, 9/11,
9/11, 93.
yes.
Of the
So
World Trade
then you
Center.
look at things like there was a car bombing in Washington, D.C., where a Chilean ambassador was murdered and an American citizen who was his assistant was murdered. I have found a link to every single one of these events in the United States to operators. As a matter of fact, you look at the guy, the Washington guy from Afghanistan that just shot those 2 National Guard.
Right.
Who was he trained
Right.
by?
Yeah, CIA. CIA guy. Right.
So you start to put these pieces together, and all of the assassinations that were going on, the JFK assassination, RFK assassination, MLK
MLK.
assassination,
Mhm.
every single one of them has links to these foreign people or Cuban exiles. Every single one of them. So you quickly realize that this worldwide operation has been living among us and none of us knew about it. And it
And
was
still
so
and still living.
well, we just had those 2 National Guard guys taken out. Well,
Yeah.
one of them taken out. The other one was injured. Yeah.
What was Charlie Kirk,
So to
in your
me,
opinion?
do you know who Fred Hampton is?
I do.
Okay, so
That's from the
killed by the FBI.
right,
Yeah, murdered, and everybody in the house murdered. And what was
right,
his big crime? His big crime was creating the Rainbow Coalition. And
right.
what
Yeah,
did
for
the
Jesse
Rainbow
Jackson.
Coalition Yeah. What
Yeah.
did the Rainbow Coalition wanna do? Bring
Bring
Hispanic,
in
white, and blacks that were basically
together.
poor and forgotten about
Yeah,
together
together.
for political change. That
Right.
was his big crime.
Mhm.
And what did I start off with? The strategy of tension. If you cannot keep them separated and they ever unite, then they're dead. Not us, them. Fred
Right.
Hampton was one of the most motivational people when it came to gathering people together in a fight against the system. That terrifies them, which
You
is
know, and this is one reason about the Black Panther Party too, since you went there, did a big thing about that. I mean, that's part of this too. You know, I think, you know, as far as what the Black Panther Party wanted to do with the black people and you know, in the black communities and things like that as well. You know, because that's one of the things too. They they need the black community separated. They need it in chaos. They need, you know, the destruction of the nuclear family. You know,
that's what
because when I go
BLM was
back,
all.
I tell people all the time. I said black people are actually better off, and then people say, "Oh, you're a racist, your Uncle Tom," but black people were actually better off during Jim Crow in the '60s, in the '20s, and the '30s. Black people in America actually were well off until, you know, all of this, like I say, the tension started because they saw, hey, you know, black people can do well, and we actually get along with white people when there's no tension, you know, when there's not, and
Yes.
they have to have that, right? You
They have
know,
to have that.
constantly. So,
That to me was the big fear with Charlie Kirk. Charlie
hmm,
Kirk went into their territory, which is the college campus, and they use it for indoctrination.
right,
And he was collecting people all together
right.
to wake up.
He was
That's
winning minds. He was
that's a
winning
huge threat.
minds.
Yes,
Hmm.
that is a huge threat to them. And it was all people, regardless of race or religion or
Right.
anything. He talked to everybody and
Everyone.
anybody about anything, and you
Hmm.
cannot have that. It's not
Right.
allowed.
Right. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. You know, I that's pretty much what I said too. You know, about that is that he was bringing the masses of the young minds together on these college campuses, and they were listening to him, and they was like, okay, no, okay, we gotta get rid of this dude.
Yeah,
So, you know,
that
and
is a huge threat to them.
mhm, mm. So what's gonna happen in in Venezuela? What's gonna be the outcome? It's not gonna be roses down there. I mean, because if you look at anything as far as how these operations always go, but it's I don't think it's gonna be easy for. And here's one thing I think too, and I'll say this, and people probably gonna think I'm crazy. I know military operations. I know covert, overt operations. This operation took 47 seconds, I think they said. 47 seconds, right? To go down on the ground, find Maduro. You know, there's the intelligence must have been great. The intelligence was so good, and he was on his way to the bunker and he didn't make it. Took 47 seconds. Nobody was killed, no soldiers, none
Oh,
of those
there was
people.
people killed. His
I mean,
wife,
there were civilians
yeah.
killed. I didn't hear, you know, as far as Maduro's security,
Yeah, there's
right?
like
Because
14 of them dead.
14, 4, okay, I didn't hear that part
I
that
don't know
his
exact now,
security
it may be
were killed.
17. There's several of them. Yeah, because
Well,
they're
I
all
know it was
talking about them
civilians.
being trained in Cuba.
Okay, okay. Well, I didn't watch TV today. I didn't watch any of that stuff today. It may have come out, but
Yeah, there's dead
okay.
bodies.
So there's the dead bodies, but 47 seconds. I think that to me, I think there was a deal made between Maduro and whatever forces you want to call it, Trump, you want to call it whatever, to get him out of Venezuela or whatever the case is. I think a deal was made because there was really, I don't think there was, because he should have always been in the bunker. Let's just say that, right? Not on his way, not going. He knew at some point he was going to be attacked. So, you know, I think this 47-second thing, I think, you know, the operation was theater, you know, for the most part, I think, you know, I guess like any false flag, people had to die, but 47 seconds, just doesn't seem right to me.
So, the most comparable operation is Noriega.
Right.
Took 5 days
Took
to yeah, to find him, and then once they
Mhm.
found him, it took 10 days of psychological operations to get him
Right.
for a total of
The loud music, 80 AC/DC, and all of
yeah.
that stuff to force him out or whatever the case is. So yeah. So you compare that with a president, with a world leader. I mean, You can't go down to Africa and capture nobody in 47 seconds. Get the fuck
Well,
out.
did you hear that the France, like 2 days ago, tried to,
Tried to
assassinate
assassinate
Burkina
Burkina
Faso?
Faso.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that guy
yeah,
is a rock.
yeah, yeah.
I
That
love
guy, I love the guy. He's a badass. Oh, well, he got his country. Well, he saw his country and people were being screwed over by France in the West, and he kicked them out, and he became. And now look at what's happening there, and they're a
Amazing.
mineral rich company. I actually put a post up. It's so funny. I said, watch your back, man. They're coming for your shit. Right? I said, they're coming for your shit. They're coming for your natural resources. They're going to start the propaganda that you're harboring terrorists and that you're killing people. And so we have to go and save the people of Burkina Faso. And nothing's going on there but right now but greatness.
Yes.
Nothing is going on but greatness. But yeah, they tried to assassinate him and they got caught.
Yeah.
They got caught.
Yeah, what happens when you can't pick up the phone and dial 911 CIA? Oh, look,
Right.
you're on your own and you screwed it
Right.
up.
Right. You screwed up, buddy. And yeah, I mean, and that's and of course, we're never gonna hear that here in the mainstream media, the United States. We're never gonna. Hey, guess what happened in Burkina Faso? You actually have to go and look for to find it, or
Yes.
actually be doing research like us. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, dude is like, he was friends with Maduro. Of course, that's what they're gonna use. But the fact that he's doing great things in Burkina Faso.
So let's
I mean,
talk about that for a second. That's something that we haven't even covered. So when you have a country like Venezuela, let's talk a little bit about Venezuela history. Um,
mhm,
Venezuela had in the 1980s, 70s, and 80s, um, while it was not officially part of Operation Condor on the paper, they had all of the same infrastructure. The USAID went in and set up the Office of Public Safety with the CIA. They had black site prisons that
right.
anybody that resisted the officially approved leader of Venezuela, the Rockefellers were Nelson Rockefeller practically lived there. He owned all the a big grocery store chain.
Right.
Um,
Standard Oil, all that stuff was
was
yeah.
in there. Yeah, all of
Mhm,
that. Okay.
mhm,
Um, so anytime these operations, meaning the CIA and the International Syndicate comes in, there's an automatic creation of a co-opted political class and an elite class. And the elite class are like the plantation owners to the peasants. So they're going to use the peasants. And oh, by the way, you're not allowed to unionize against the elite.
right, right.
So there is actually an office in the National Endowment for Democracy. There's 4 little pots. There's a Republican pot, a Democrat pot, a union pot, and a chamber pot, a chamber of commerce. So the union people in the National Endowment for Democracy will go in if you have an effective union leader, like Chavez was, and Maduro at one point. They're going to infiltrate that union and destroy it. They will
Right,
create riots or whatever and destroy the union. So you're not allowed as a peasant to get out of your peasant class.
right, right.
Um, so this goes on for decades. And oh, by the way, do you know what Jeb Bush's first job was?
He was doing something in Venezuela.
He was a banker.
He was
He
a
was
banker.
laundering the drug money.
Mhm.
Okay. And his dad has oil deals
Right.
off the coast of Venezuela with Zapata oil. So there's this entire nefarious thing going on in Venezuela. If you get too big for your britches, you got taken to a black site and tortured. So all of this stuff is going on, just like it did in Chile under Pinochet and all of these other people. All right.
Mhm.
So Chavez in the early 1990s, like 92, tries to coup the government and he's put in jail for 2 years.
Right.
And he comes out, forms a political party, and gets elected to presidency in 1998. Prior to him being president, most people think he nationalized oil. He did not.
No.
Yeah. So that was already done. That was
Mhm.
done by the former government. in order to try to stave off this revolutionary fever that was boiling in Venezuela. And they thought by nationalizing it and still maintaining the same kind of deals, but appearing to be a nationalized resource, that that would placate those people. So when Chavez becomes president, almost immediately they try to coup him. And he has to agree to have a referendum vote. And he wins the referendum vote.
Right.
And the international observers all said that it was a legitimate vote. But of course, now people are going back and saying, oh no, this Smartmatic machine was used. And let me tell you about the
Right.
people that created Smartmatic. Whenever the revolution does happen and Chavez becomes president, and he actually starts using the oil money, not to the elite, but for the
Mhm.
people and building
Mhm.
schools and hospitals and stuff like that, like Mossadegh wanted to try to do
Right.
in Iran and like Lumumba tried to do in the Congo.
Congo. Mhm.
Those elites all flee because they're now afraid that they're going to go to
They're
jail
gonna
for their
right.
corruption.
Right.
And where do they flee to? They flee to Miami. And if you research those 3 Venezuelan expats that created Smartmatic, they're tied to the elite in Venezuela. But you're
Mhm.
being told a story today by Patrick Byrne and all of these other people that no. Those people were actually Venezuelans doing it, and Venezuela is the one that rigged their own election. Yeah, that's not how that works. They
Mhm.
didn't like Chavez, and they were going to try to use those machines to overthrow his government.
Right.
Um, so there has been repeated coups between Chavez and Maduro.
Right.
Somehow, the CIA machine that has interfered in every election since 1948, the first one being in Italy to make sure it joined NATO, we're supposed to believe that the CIA is simultaneously trying to overthrow Chavez's government, which they did with uh, Guaido and this chick that just won the Mikado that just won the
Yeah,
Nobel
Machado.
Prize.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they're trying to overthrow the government and work with the CIA while we're supposed to believe the CIA that Venezuela is with the CIA in orchestrating all of this election fraud. It's
Mhm.
like that doesn't even make sense. You guys are
Yeah.
so screwed up at this point, and your world is caving in on it that you are making up stories now that
Making
don't
up
even
stuff.
make sense.
Right.
So if you look at that evolutionary process in Venezuela, and again, I'm not a Chavez fan, I'm not a Maduro fan. I'm just telling you real life history
Right.
that the CIA has tried repeatedly to overthrow those two governments.
For 20 plus years.
Yeah. So, understanding all of that, um, are they likely doing things they shouldn't be doing? Yes. But let me remind you that so is the United States government. Look what Biden did. Now, can you imagine? We didn't think he was legitimate. Did some
Right.
foreign government come snatch him? I
You know,
wish.
that's what I said. I was like, we didn't see a coup, where foreign governments come to snatch Biden because they couped the United States in 2020.
Yeah.
Everyone said, even Trump said, "Oh, he's an illegal president," but Russia didn't come in here and snatch Biden or China. For us, we had a coup. So what's the difference?
I think
So
we would
what's
all
the
paid
difference?
somebody to do it,
Right.
but nobody did.
Yeah.
So literally nothing about what's going on in Venezuela on the surface makes sense.
None of it. None of
Um,
it.
However, I do believe that if Maduro is here and he talks about all of the stuff that was going on, not just in Venezuela, because Maduro had lots of conversations with lots of other people like Colombia, who
Right.
is the narco trafficking capital of the
Mhm.
world at this point. Um, I think it's going to be very, very interesting. But let me also kind of just put a little brakes on that. In the Noriega trial, once we snatched him and brought him back, another foreign leader,
Right.
and
Another.
what the CIA did was they made a deal with the prosecutors and the pre-trial arrangement. Now, keep in mind, the CIA has been in Colombia forever, since the Golden Triangle was set up in the early 80s, or excuse me, the Crystal Triangle. There's so many triangles, the Golden Triangle, Crystal Triangle, whatever, all drugs, all over the world, and the CIA is behind all of them. So the prosecution got the judge to agree that Noriega nor his defense attorney could mention anything about the CIA. It was not allowed in the trial. So Noriega had been on the CIA's payroll for about 20 years, both when he was a general and then when he was installed. Noriega's problem happened to be, well, he had a lot of them, but one of his major problems was when Pablo Escobar in Colombia, in the Medellin cartel versus the Cali cartel was basically the state-owned one that was protected no matter what. But you always hear about the Medellin cartel. You never hear about the Cali cartel. You hear about the Medellin cartel.
Only the bad one.
Escobar had decided, once he had some money, that he was not going to use the approved money laundering in the U.S. bank system.
Right.
He also decided that...
Oh, no, that went on. That went on in the United States. We had banks actually money laundered drug money. Really?
I can tell you a story about that that'll blow your socks off. That brings us right up to today. But Escobar had decided that he was going to not invest in real estate in the United States, which is their favorite money laundering operation.
Right.
He was going to invest his drug profits in Medellin. He built schools, he built hospitals, he gave people homes. He also decided he wasn't going to use the Cuban exile community to market his drugs. So he came to Miami and started killing them and replacing them with Colombians. So that he was going to cut out the CIA's money middleman. So what happened to Pablo Escobar? He got killed. And who was his preferred money launderer? The banks in Panama, where Noriega was. And so Noriega had to go. And so Bush Sr., Mr. CIA himself, goes down there and nabs him and brings him up here, and then mandates that no mention of the role of the CIA in the Colombian drug being laundered through Panama is allowed to come into the trial. But I don't think that this current DOJ is going to limit who gets exposed in Maduro's trial.
Well, I think I have no faith in this DOJ. Zero, absolutely zero. You know, and that was from the beginning. Especially when he brought in Pam Bondi as you know, as the director, as the AG. Because of course no one's been arrested, so I'll just say that I think she's a gatekeeper. I don't believe, and they may. I mean, it may happen because they want Maduro to go down, I guess. You know, and I don't think they're going to expose the CIA. I don't believe the CIA is going to let that happen. I don't believe Maduro may talk about some things. I don't believe Maduro was on the CIA payroll.
Oh, he was not. No.
He was not on the payroll. So,
but he knows who was.
He may know who was. And yeah, and I'm pretty sure he knows. But I think they'll strike a deal before they let that happen. You know, maybe, or they'll kill him before it happens, or something of of that effect. You know, but as far as Venezuela and and it all went on because I've studied that the Venezuelan, all the the coup attempts down there against Chavez and all that, because the only thing that we get fed is the boogeyman stories. Okay. Everyone has the boogeyman stories. Okay. And the same thing about Putin. Everyone has the boogeyman stories. Everyone, and, all that, but and they don't go and dig deep as to, okay, what happened? How did this guy get installed? What happened? What was the conflict down there, right? And if there was no conflict, there never should have. Why is the guy getting coup attempts on him? By the United States, and history tells us because that's the guy that's not going to play with the United States. He doesn't play fair. He doesn't play right, right?
Oh,
You
and that's
know,
what I was gonna say about the Burkina Faso, thing is when you have these situations where Chavez left the central banking system, right?
hmm
And he was using the money for the people, and his uh, economy is in the right direction. They implement sanctions, and
sanctions. I was
they
just
did
about
the
to go
exact
there.
same thing with
Right.
Salvador Allende in Chile when
Mhm.
he got elected after the CIA interference in the election repeatedly. And they basically were going to blockade the Chilean coast. They cut them off from everything. Well, when you do that, who are they going to trade with?
Right.
They're going to trade with, in the case of Salvador Allende, the Soviet Union, because the Soviet
Mhm.
Union doesn't give a
China,
shit about America.
Soviet Union, they don't care. They just want their
As
money.
soon
They
as
they
he
want to
picks
build their belts and roads.
and as
you
soon as
know.
he picks up the phone and says, "Hey, I need some weapons, they're going to attack me," the CIA calls him a communist
Right.
because
Right.
that's the
And
boogeyman.
or the big thing now is they're harboring terrorists. I mean, and that's what I was going to say too. As far as people say that these countries, whether it's Iran, but I'll stand Venezuela. Oh, Venezuelan people are suffering. Venezuela, and you can use Cuba the same way, right? It's the sanctions against these
That kills.
countries that cause the people to suffer
Yes.
and causes the country to collapse and go into chaos. And then they use that and they blame the government and they blame,
Well,
who's in
it's
charge. And
socialism failing.
so socialism is failing or whatever, it's failing. But it's the sanctions that's caused that. A lot of people, I'm gonna give you guys a book to read, right? As far as the audience out there, read the book. I forget the guy's name, shit, but it's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman,
Yeah.
right? He was a guy that went around to all these countries and caused the chaos and caused the dissension, and, for these countries to fail economically, put the plans in, and part of that was the sanctions and caused the chaos. But this is what happens to those countries,
Yeah.
Now, and so I'm gonna ask this, okay, because they say, oh, we don't have boots on the ground, we don't have this. We have to have people on the ground right now because they don't have, we don't want them, like Trump said, well, we don't want, someone bad coming in, so we're going to have to run the country. How the hell are we going to run Venezuela?
Well, and the whole accusation that they're harboring terrorists comes from the Iranians, and of course, if you're of Iranian descent, you're automatically Hezbollah, just automatically. So there are Iranians in Venezuela, but also Iran, another country that doesn't give a shit and doesn't play this international game, agreed to trade food for oil, as did China, as did everybody else that you're not allowed to talk to, Cuba being one of them. So if the only thing that you have is oil as your currency, you are going to feed your people. And if the only countries that will trade with you, oh, and by the way, do you know the country you never hear about that traded with Venezuela a lot is Turkey.
Israel or Turkey?
Turkey.
Okay.
Turkey, a NATO country.
Well, yeah, true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Turkey,
So
yeah.
you
Right.
never hear about Turkey trading. But Iran was providing food for Venezuela for oil.
hmm
And then they were processing the oil and moving it on, or just moving it on to China, whatever it is that they were doing. But they
Right.
were,
Yeah, yeah. They weren't using the dollar. They stopped using the dollar to.
so the one guy that was working those deals was a guy by the name of Alex Saab. Alex Saab was actually a Colombian, and he was hired by Maduro to work trade agreements. Well, he happened to be flying to Iran and stopped in, I can't remember the name of the country, just on the coast, what would that be? The west coast of Africa for fuel on his way to Iran. And the CIA arranged for him to be arrested and then backdated an Interpol arrest warrant in order to justify their detaining him. And then they brought him to the United States and put him on trial as, basically an enabler of this, miraculous thing that we're able to do. You're trading with a sanctioned country.
Hmm.
Well, I'm
Right.
sorry, but other countries don't recognize US sanctions. Nobody gives a
No,
shit.
no,
And
especially when they have their own currency and not using it really a central bank, they could care less.
that's right.
Because I mean, and especially if
So,
if they're not using the SWIFT system, because and this is what the BRICS is about too, getting off the
yes,
SWIFT system and all
yes.
that shit.
So go ahead and push more people into BRICS.
Right, right, and that's what's going to happen. I mean,
Yes.
and people don't understand this, right? Okay, and I'll put this out there. Then I know we're at the 2 hour limit almost, but they saw that Trump bombed Nigeria on behalf of Christians being slaughtered. It just so happened at that same time Nigeria stopped using US dollars. I think that may have been a warning or something, but it's a lot of countries. And last count I heard was like 167
But let me
countries
ask you,
were actually on board,
if you
to
were if you were president and you wanted to get people off the US dollar and break the Fed, wouldn't BRICS be the way you do it?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. That's the way. Without a doubt. I mean, and they can because a lot of people don't understand this. The BRICS is blockchain, right? The United States can't steal your money or sanction you any longer,
Right.
right?
So
Because you're not on the SWIFT system.
if you wanted to do it without overtly doing it, wouldn't you be doing it this way?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way you do it. That's the way you do it, and of course we can't have that because we have to have the petrodollar. We have to have the currency out there, or else the United States will fail. And that's what a lot of people say and think. Well, if we don't have the dollar, then we're gonna fail. Then we probably should figure out a new system, and instead of a system on debt, because a lot of these other systems they're hoarding gold, they're getting gold, and they're transferring, they're going under gold and silver, whatever precious metal standard, whatever they're using, instead of this fiat currency based on debt, and so I think this has a lot to do with what's going on as well, because the United States recognize that these countries are going on BRICS. You're talking about Russia, and I still don't understand. And this, and I thought about this, and here's the one reason that we're propping up Qatar now. We're building up Qatar. We're in bed with Qatar now because Saudi Arabia is a BRICS country. Qatar isn't.
So I think MBS and Trump has a very good relationship. Um, and because it was Trump that that they gave the sword dance to during his first
Right, yeah,
administration.
when he went to Saudi Arabia, oh, yeah, they loved him. I mean,
Yeah.
from what I
Well,
saw.
MBS does, but the other guys
Mhm.
did not, because the other guys that all got arrested were the
Right,
old Saudi,
the old
the
guard, right,
other ones that were in bed with Bush and Cheney and
right,
all of those people.
mhm.
So I think there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that most of us don't understand. But if you can scan out to the 30,000-foot look and recognize all of the pieces that are aligning and pushing people off the dollar, where there is going to be, I'm convinced before Trump's out of office, we will not have a Fed.
Well, you know what? That would be one promise that he'd keep, I guess. In the Fed, we have to. I mean, because of course we don't owe $38 trillion. The people don't. That's not our debt. And so, and here's the thing. Here's the thing that I'm loving. I actually started in 2025. I honestly did. I said this, right? We need to have a tax revolt in this country. We need to, whatever they steal through income taxes, straight out of your paycheck, fine. But, you know, no one should send money to the government in April. Stop. Just stop, because that's the only way we're going to defund. You would talk about defund the corruption. We have to stop sending money to DC. That's the corruption right there. And it's and Elon Musk exposed it all. Even though they still paid it out in the big beautiful bill, they still funded everything Joe Biden wanted and Joe Biden had. I guess and the American people are still getting screwed. But a lot of people are saying it now. Tax vote 20. I'm not paying taxes anymore. We, we,
But a lot of
so.
that money was called back. They so if you are watching all of these contract cancellations with the EPA, with
Mhm,
the Voice of America, and all of those organizations, the funding that's been cut off through the Department of Education, a lot
mhm.
of the government offices are not spending the money in the areas that were fraudulent. Because they're using that as the excuse to not continue those contracts. There's been hundreds of billions of dollars of contract cancellations as a result of Doge.
Okay, well, good. That would be a good thing then. If it's not being, I guess, and spent corruptly in another area, I guess.
Well, you can't do that. I mean, it's by appropriation, so you can't
Well,
move
I
that.
know, yeah, yeah. I mean, but I've seen money that was appropriated for one thing be shifted to another thing. I've seen that.
Within
Um,
within a, category, that's
mhm.
that but you can't, like, take money that was programmed for EPA and move it over to, like, DHS.
Agriculture, DHO. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right, right. I understand that. So right. So well, cool.
Or you could
But
go to
this has been right. You could. Some of us could anyway. Yeah, some
and
of
I
us would go to jail. you know. Oh wow. So okay. So I'm gonna give you the last one. Wrap it up. We're really over time, but that's cool because this has been very very interesting. And I will say this because I'll say this because I have a person over here, and and I always talk with my chat over here, and I do have a person, and she's a listener. She's a devout fan of the show, but she disputes what you had or what you said about, I guess, Venezuela, because she lived there for a long time and she was there, and so she said that some things didn't happen.
what didn't
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to find out here. Uh, I was asked to go. Well, I have to go read her page or whatever. But you didn't see my question. 3624. No, I didn't. Give me a question again. 3624. K 3624. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. And she seems to be saying herself to be a moderate for the America only. Let me wait a minute. I keep reading it everywhere. Hold on. I have to go back through the chat. Okay, heard MTG is going to run for president in 2028. What do I think about it? Oh, I saw it. MTG, she should not run for president in 2028. She should just sit on the sidelines. I think she sort of ruined her chances or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I know that's what the deal was. As far as why she is distancing herself and trying to spill the beans on everything. But
wanted to run
you were
for governor.
she can run for governor
That's
in
what she wanted.
Georgia. If that's what she wants to do. I mean,
She'd be better than Kemp.
Kemp is a bust. Yeah, yeah, that dude. I lived in Georgia too, but I hate that guy. But yeah, I mean, I think she would be better than Kemp. President, nah, I don't think she'd win. I don't think she'll have a chance to win, to be honest. So I think I answered your question on that. But I was trying to find. I have to go to get her page or whatever. So because I don't know exactly what she's talking about. I guess something about Venezuela. So, but anyway,
And I
that's
get
that.
that a lot when you start talking. I was talking about Iran and the use of the, stay behind units in the southern tribes, and I had some lady tell me, "Oh, that didn't happen."
Oh well,
It
it's out there. That's public now. I mean, you can
Yeah,
actually
it's
go and find
actually
that about
declassified.
what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's actually
declassified.
declassified State Department
Right,
cables. Um,
right.
there's a lot of people that can live, and this lady had lived in northern Iran and had been there for a while. And these things happen. These things happen around you, and a lot of the time, that it doesn't mean I lived in America. most of my adult life and didn't know any of this stuff.
Well, a lot of people live in America and don't know anything about this stuff. A lot of
Yeah.
people live in America and they didn't know that the CIA were the drug runners for the crack cocaine in South Central
I
LA
had
and
no idea about
whatever.
MK Ultra.
You know, MK Ultra. Nobody knew about it. I mean, so yeah, because people do live in a bubble, so you can actually live in a country or
And
live
not
in and
system.
live in another and not know what's going on in another state. And especially when these are covert operations. Because like you said, I mean, and like I've read too. I mean, with these stay back units it's they've operated and just go look it up, right? They've operated in countries. They're part of the ones that causes the coups and the uprisings and the color revolutions and
They were
they're all attached to.
they were in Italy from 1949, and no one knew. A few people knew. Um, the majority of the citizens,
Right,
99%
they
of
didn't
the
know.
citizens had no idea until they were
Right,
told in 1990. They
right.
just thought the mafia was blowing shit up.
Right, exactly. They thought it was
Or
the
the
mafia, or they thought it was the IRA in Great Britain or Scotland or wherever the IRA operated, and all of these different groups. The Chechens, and I mean you have all these groups, but these are organized terrorist groups and
And
operations.
I
So
was shocked to find out that the majority of the Chechens was mujahideen trained by
it's
the
Muja,
CIA.
right? Absolutely, that's it. Yeah,
I was shocked
yep.
by that.
Yeah, when you actually go digging to find out, who they be like, wow, man, that is shocking, and you don't know, and you'll be surprised. I mean, because like it's almost finding out that your next door neighbor is a child molester, right? You talk to him every day. He's a friendly, he's cordial. He came over to your barbecues, but you don't really know what goes on in his house or down the street or wherever because you're not with him all the time. You don't really know what goes on in his house. You don't know what goes on at his business, and then you come to find out the police is knocking on his door and he's being arrested. Be like, why? Oh, he's his big ass child molester. Be like, what? 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 Really?
Yeah,
So that's how it is because you don't know until you know,
yeah.
right? And you don't know until you know, and you can be blinded, because a lot of people are led blindly. And I'm not saying that anybody that listens to the show is, because everyone that listens to the show is not led blindly, and this is why the person asks the question or dispute, because they're not just say, oh yeah, she's right. No, because well, I live there. Well, you possibly you just didn't know, you know but that's fine. I mean, because a lot of people, especially in these other countries, I've been in countries in Africa to where a coup was taking place on one side, and the other, and we had no clue that a coup was taking place because it hadn't reached there yet. And when we found out, oh, we had to get the hell out of there because hey, this could, right? And that's what happens because sometimes it happens so fast. Sometimes it happens, and just because you don't know, communications are cut. Things like that. If something happens in this country to where the communications are cut, the internet is gone, the cell phones are gone, people are going to be fucking blind. They're not going to know what hits them until it hits them. And so and that's pretty much the way this whole thing is, Operation Gladio. And this is huge, and like I said, I think it's still going on. you know um to finish up on Venezuela, folks, I don't think it's going to end well, in Venezuela right now. I think we're going to have to, they say no troops and no boots are going to be on the ground. I don't see how we can't if we're running the country, because I don't think all those people down there are just going to let these oil oligarchs and oil companies come in and just start operating those factories or those oil wells again without any no confrontation. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think I don't think it's going to be as smooth and as easy as 47 seconds. So that's
I
just my
agree with
take. Is my take. Well, Colonel, thank you. Thank you for coming on. It was good. And 2 hours goes fast. It's, when you actually just chatting, 2 hours goes fast. And thank you for coming on. You are welcome back. Anytime you want to come back on the show, let me know. Hit me up, but you're welcome back anytime. I appreciate you coming in. We call this the Lion's Den because sometimes it does get a little gnarly in here. So, but
that.
it does. But thank you for coming on. We appreciate you, and
Thanks
we'll
for
see you next time. Yeah,
having. Okay.
absolutely. And continue to follow you and this Operation Gladio stuff, and follow her on X. I tell you what, give your information out to everyone that may want to follow you. What's your handles and your
So on Rumble, I do a daily show Monday through Friday at 4 o'clock at the Colonel's Corner. And we basically go through books. The book we just finished up was The Mafia, CIA, and George Bush. We're going to be doing next. Hold on just a second, I'll tell you. We are going to be doing The Devil's Chessboard. There's just hours and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of books. I've done probably 30 books that are thumbnailed. If you go to my Rumble page at the Colonel's Corner, if you hit playlist, it will have a tile for each book we've done. We've done Whitney Webb's books, both volumes, Cynthia Chung's book, which basically takes us through the evolution of the Fabian Society down to the Operation Gladio. And there's just a ton of books. We did Gary Webb's book, Dark Alliance, and numerous other ones. Paul Williams' book. I actually interviewed Paul Williams twice, that wrote the book. I call it the Bible for Operation Gladio. And that's what got me started on this whole thing. So anyway, and on X, I'm at Colonel Towner, and Colonel is spelled out.
There you go. There it is. You have a Substack? Give your Substack.
I do. It's called the Colonel's Corner.
Okay, that is it. Okay, well, there it is. All right, so thank you, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you, Colonel, and we'll see you next time.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye. All right, there you go. I hope that was interesting for you guys. It was interesting for me. I know a lot about it, and it's good to see you guys, man. It's good to see you all after the new year. Next week, I'm supposed to be live. I'm supposed to be live at a different location. I'm live every week, but I'm supposed to be on location live somewhere. So, K3624. Trump did say we will run the country for short term. Okay, I'm gonna see how that pans out. No, she was saying the Operation Gladio was not didn't happen in Venezuela. As far as that go, I believe it's what she said. Well, no, that was us. That was military operation. It could have been part of Operation Gladio, but I think I think it's bigger than that. I think we went in to, I guess, one thing to keep China from getting the oil, in Iran, and Maduro. Of course, my big thing is this, right? When we were told that it was about drugs, just don't lie to me, right? I know it wasn't about drugs. I am hip to that. Just say what it is. Like, and Trump did. He said, we want the oil, we want our money back, and we're going to be selling a lot of oil, and make, and that's what he said. He said, the Venezuelan people, they say, oh, they're going to, benefit from it. That's yet to see. But, but like we were talking earlier, I think that just sets the precedent of Putin to go get Zelensky, China to go get Taiwan, and this may have triggered, some different things like that. So we'll see what happens from here on out. I appreciate you joining me and coming back. And man, Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year. And of course, love you all. But we'll see what happens in Venezuela. That's just a big thing. But I know what hasn't happened. No arrest has happened. So I'm going to get out of here. I'll take it easy. I'm going to go drink some beer with my horses. All right, y'all take care. See y'all next week. Peace.
Really, man, come on. 6 o'clock news says somebody been shot. Somebody's been. They didn't get too far.
Grandpappy told my pappy back in my day, son, a man had the answer for the wicked that he done. Take all the rope in Texas, find a tall oak tree, round up all of them bad boys, hang 'em high in the street. for all the people to see.
That justice is the one thing you should always find. You gotta saddle up your boys, you gotta draw a hard line.
When the gun smoke settles, we'll sing a victory tune, and we'll all meet back at the local saloon.
We'll raise up our glasses against evil forces, singing whiskey for my men, beer for my horses. We got too many gangsters doing dirty deeds.
Too much corruption and crime in the streets.
It's time the long arm of the law put a few more in the ground.
Send them all to their maker and he'll settle on down.
You can bet he'll settle down. Cause justice is the one thing you should always find. You gotta saddle up your boys, you gotta draw a hard line.
When the gun smoke settles, we'll sing a victory tune, and we'll all meet back at the local saloon.
And we'll raise up our glasses against evil forces, saying whiskey for my men, beer for my horses. Whiskey for my men, beer for my horses. You know, justice is the one thing you should always find. You gotta saddle up your boys, you gotta draw a hard line.
When the gun smoke settles, we'll sing a victory tune, and we'll all meet back at the local saloon.
And we'll raise up our glasses against evil forces, singing whiskey for my men, beer for my horses. Singing whiskey for my men, beer for my horses.